The Cook. A historical fiction of love, identity and fate by S.J. Jeppsson. Chapter 10. Descending to the crew's quarters. A different world. Slipping away from the watchful eyes of first-class society, Lydia followed Kate down a set of dimly lit staircases, the polished grandeur of first class fading with every step. Gone were the gold-trimmed ceilings, the plush carpets, and the soft murmur of aristocratic conversation. Here, the ship was raw, its corridors lined with exposed pipes and unpolished metal, the hum of the ship's engines a steady pulse beneath their feet, the smell of sea brine mixed with oil and damp wood, and instead of whispered pleasantries, the air thrummed with laughter, the sharp clang of metal against metal, and the occasional bark of orders from passing crewmen. By the time they reached G-Deck, the atmosphere had changed completely. Music, raucous and unrefined, spilled down the hall from behind a heavy wooden door, accompanied by the rhythmic stomp of boots on the floorboards. Lydia hesitated just a moment, glancing at Kate, her eyes alight with intrigue.
"You're sure they won't mind?"
she asked, though a hint of a smile played at her lips. Kate smirked.
"They won't care.
A glint of mischief danced in her gaze.
Especially not him."
Lydia's brow lifted.
"Who?"
They'd barely begun their advance to the door when a voice stopped them cold. "Excuse me, miss," a young steward said, stepping from the shadows near the corridor. He glanced at Kate, then at Lydia, specifically at her gown, her pearls, her unmistakable first-class polish. His posture stiffened. "These areas are for crew only. Passengers aren't permitted below E-Deck." Lydia blinked, caught for the first time in unfamiliar territory.
"I'm not just a passenger,"
she said smoothly, chin tilting upward.
"Miss Cook is my companion and I'm here with her."
The steward looked uncertain. He wasn't trying to be rude, just doing his job. And frankly, he didn't look eager to escort a woman like Lydia anywhere she didn't want to go. "Still, miss," he said, quieter now. "If someone sees you down here, it could be my job." Kate stepped forward.
"It's all right. She's with me. We're not causing trouble."
A tense beat passed. Then, the door to the crew lounge opened and another voice cut in. Rough, dry, amused.
"She's already causing plenty of trouble."
Gideon laughed, opening the door with a wide grin.
"But the good kind."
The steward turned. Recognizing Gideon, he hesitated, then gave a reluctant shrug and stepped aside. 5 minutes, he muttered. "Don't let her get caught with a beer in hand." Gideon pushed the door open wider with one hand, nodding toward the raucous sound spilling from inside.
"Come on then, before someone changes his mind."
Kate grinned and stepped through. Lydia followed, silk skirts brushing against the metal frame. As they crossed the threshold, the warmth and noise of the party hit them like a wave. Music, laughter, the sharp scent of ale and sweat. They turned back just as Gideon let the door swing half shut behind him. He took a swig of ale, then met Lydia's eyes with a smirk and a beat of quiet amusement. The moment they stepped inside, Lydia was overwhelmed in the best way possible. This was nothing like the refined lounges and gilded ballrooms she had spent her life in. Here, everything was alive. The room was crowded, warm, and pulsing with raw energy. Unlike the carefully choreographed elegance of first-class gatherings, where laughter was soft and measured, here it was boisterous, uninhibited, and infectious. Stewards, maids, and stokers clapped in time with the fiddle and accordion, their movements unpolished but full of spirit. A few bottles of whiskey and beer were passed freely, with no delicate sipping, just deep, hearty swigs. The scent of salt, sweat, and burning oil hung thick in the air, mingling with the occasional waft of ale spilled on the wooden floorboards. The dancers moved wildly, their skirts spinning, boots pounding in time with the music. No pretense, no etiquette. Just pure, unrestrained joy. Lydia exhaled, already feeling lighter, already feeling free. Gideon leaned against the wall, arms folded across his chest, sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms dusted lightly with flour. The faintest smudge of soot traced his jaw, evidence of a long day's work in the heat of the ship's kitchen. But his dark eyes held nothing but amusement, glinting with something unreadable as he sized her up.
Didn't expect to see you down here, Miss Weatherby.
Lydia lifted her chin slightly at this handsome stranger, her own smile teasing.
And yet, here I am.
Gideon's lips twitched, and he let out a short chuckle, shaking his head as he stepped closer.
Wearing silken pearls, no less.
He remarked, his gaze flicking over her gown, the delicate sheen of champagne satin, the intricate embroidery glinting under the dim lantern light. Lydia arched a brow, tilting her head.
I do like to make an entrance.
Gideon tilted his own head in response, considering her.
Think you can keep up, Lady Weatherby?
Her smile widened.
That depends.
On what?
Are you asking me to dance?
A flicker of surprise crossed Gideon's face, brief but unmistakable. But just as quickly, it was replaced by a slow, knowing grin. Without another word, he extended his hand. Lydia didn't hesitate. She took it. The moment Gideon pulled her into the dance, Lydia knew she had made the right decision. Gideon twirled her suddenly, making her laugh breathlessly, her skirts flaring out around her. This was nothing like the controlled, rigid waltzes she had been forced to learn. This was wild, fast, exhilarating. The other dancers clapped along, grinning as they saw Lydia, an aristocrat, dancing with one of their own. The music was chaotic, the steps unpredictable, and for the first time in her life, Lydia wasn't thinking about how she looked, how she was supposed to act, or whether she was breaking some unspoken rule. She was just there, just laughing, just moving. And Gideon, he was good at this. He led her with effortless confidence, his grip firm but never forceful. Even when the tempo quickened, she never faltered, never stumbled. As the song sped up, Gideon leaned in, his breath warm against her ear. She was startled by how steady he felt, how solid, how real.
You're better at this than I expected.
Lydia smirked.
That almost sounds like a compliment.
Don't go getting used to it.
He teased, twirling her again. She laughed, and for the first time in years, she felt alive. Kate, her back against a wooden crate, a bottle of beer in her hand, watched the scene unfold. She hadn't expected Lydia to let go so easily. She had assumed she'd hesitate, maybe refuse altogether. But here she was, smiling, twirling, completely at ease in a world that wasn't hers. Kate smirked, shaking her head. That girl was full of surprises. She watched them laughing together and wondered, just briefly, if Lydia understood what kind of man Gideon really was. Not just a flirt, not just a story. He had layers, sharp edges. She shifted slightly, rolling her aching ankles, wincing at the dull throb that had settled into the soles of her feet. After hours on the polished floors of the first-class dining salon, balancing trays, weaving between tables, and standing in practiced silence, she had earned this moment of rest. So she leaned back, savouring the cool bite of the beer, and let herself watch. Lydia, laughing breathlessly as Gideon spun her through the crowd, their steps wild and unpracticed, nothing like the carefully measured waltzes of first class. A world away from silk and chandeliers, yet somehow Lydia had never looked more like herself. As the song slowed, Gideon spun Lydia one last time before catching her by the waist. For a fraction of a second, they were close, closer than propriety allowed, his hands steadying her, their breaths mingling. Lydia's smile faltered just slightly. Her heart hammered unexpectedly. Gideon's dark eyes held hers. For a brief, breathless moment, the noise around them faded. Then, Lydia pulled back, smoothing her skirt as if nothing had happened. But something had, and they both knew it. When the dance was finished, Gideon led Lydia to a small wooden table where the air was thick with spilled ale and pipe smoke, the warm glow of lanterns flickering against the metal walls.
So,
He said, leaning back in his chair, watching her intently.
what's a nice girl like you doing in a place like this?
Lydia ran her fingers over the rim of a tin cup filled with ale, her lips curving into a mischievous smile.
Perhaps I wanted to see how the other half lives.
Gideon's smirk deepened.
And?
She met his gaze.
I think I like it.
Gideon chuckled.
Then you're nothing like the first-class women I've met.
Lydia arched a brow.
Oh? And how many have you met?
He shrugged.
Enough to know they'd rather look down their noses at someone like me than share a drink with me.
Lydia took a slow sip, her eyes twinkling over the rim of her cup.
Well, I'm not like them.
Gideon's smile softened.
No, you're not.
The wooden table rocked slightly beneath Lydia's elbows as she traced the rim of her tin cup with her fingertip. The hum of music and conversation filled the space around them, but here, in the dim glow of the lantern, it felt quieter, almost intimate. Across from her, Gideon leaned back in his chair, one arm slung over the backrest, watching her with a knowing glint in his dark eyes. Kate plopped into the chair beside Lydia, unceremoniously setting down a tin cup of ale of her own.
Right then,
She said, leaning forward with a smirk.
what's it like, dancing with a man who smells like flour and engine grease instead of fine cologne?
Lydia huffed a quiet laugh, taking a sip of ale before answering.
Strangely tolerable.
She tilted her head, eyes full of playful mischief.
Though I can't say the same for his ego. I imagine it's only gotten worse after that.
Gideon smirked, setting his cup down with a soft clink.
Oh, it was already intolerable, long before tonight, trust me.
Kate rolled her eyes.
Ain't that the truth?
She took a swig of ale and leaned toward Lydia.
I'll have you know, Miss Weatherby, you are the first silk-clad debutante to grace this fine establishment.
Lydia lifted a brow.
An honour, truly.
Kate grinned.
And what do you think of our little world, then?
Lydia glanced around the dimly lit room, the clatter of cups, the laughter, the easy way everyone leaned into each other, free from the constraints of etiquette and expectation.
It's
She hesitated, searching for the right word.
alive.
Gideon's smirk faded slightly, watching her.
And your world isn't?
She exhaled, tapping her fingers against her cup.
My world is careful.
She looked between them.
This one is not.
Kate let out a bark of laughter, lifting her tin cup in a toast.
Ain't that the truth?
Gideon chuckled and lifted his own.
To worlds without rules.
They clinked their cups together, and Lydia took a sip, letting the warmth of the ale settle in her chest. Kate sat back, tilting her head at Gideon.
Now, since our ladyship here is drinking in the crew quarters with the likes of us, the least you can do is entertain her properly.
Gideon smirked.
You want a story, Kate?
I want a good one.
She said, grinning.
The kind one saves for the late hours and the last drinks.
He chuckled, shaking his head, but he leaned in slightly, elbows resting on the table.
All right, fine. Let's see. Belfast. Born there, anyway.
Lydia's brows lifted with mild surprise.
You're Irish?
He gave a nod.
I came across with my folks when I was 6. We docked in New York Harbour and never looked back. So I suppose I'm a New Yorker now, but the old country's still in the bones.
Lydia's lips quirked.
An Irish New Yorker?
He nodded.
My family runs a restaurant. Nothing fancy, just a place where people come in hungry and leave happy. I grew up in that kitchen, learning how to knead dough before I could read, chopping onions with Daya yelling at me for doing it all wrong. By the time I was 16, I could cook anything on the menu with my eyes closed.
Kate whistled low.
Not bad. And yet, here you are.
Gideon lifted a shoulder.
I wanted more.
Lydia tilted her head.
More?
He nodded, a small, faraway smile playing at his lips.
I used to watch ships sail out of the harbour when I was a kid, wondered where they were going, what the world looked like beyond our little restaurant.
He took a sip of ale, then set the cup down, tapping his fingers against the worn wooden table.
I guess I just had that itch, you know, that need to see what was out there.
Kate snorted.
And instead of buying a ticket and travelling like a sane person, you what? Ran off to the Foreign Legion?
Gideon grinned.
Something like that.
Lydia blinked.
You joined the Legion?
He smirked at her expression.
What? You don't think I look the type?
I think you look like a man who makes bread, not war.
Kate howled with laughter, nearly spilling her drink.
Oh, I like her.
Gideon chuckled.
Yeah, well, they needed cooks too.
He ran a hand through his dark hair, shaking his head at the memory.
But don't get me wrong, I still spent plenty of time in the desert with a rifle, sweating half my body weight in North Africa.
He paused, his fingers drifting to the chain around his neck. With a small tug, he pulled it free from beneath his shirt, revealing a trio of pendants that caught the dim light. The first was a pair of oval tags, worn smooth from time and sweat, not military issue, but custom made. One was meant to stay with him, the other to be taken if he fell. A quiet precaution, not a regulation, just something Luke had insisted on.
In case the Legion forgot you belong to someone.
He glanced at Lydia, a half-smile tugging at his lips.
The Legion wasn't big on sentimental details. These weren't official, but the blood was real enough.
Beside them, a well-worn St. Christopher medallion. He ran a thumb over its surface, his voice thoughtful.
St. Christopher, the patron saint of travellers.
The last charm on the chain was a small, weathered pendant, one side etched with the Legion's grenade insignia, the other bearing a custom engraving of a white cap with a black visor, the Legion's Kepi Blanc. He let the pendant sway between his fingers for a moment before turning the charm over. His voice was quieter but firm.
Kepi Blanc, c'est moi.
Gideon rolled the pendant between his fingers, his gaze momentarily distant.
From a friend, Lucien.
He explained.
He saved my skin more times than I can count. When my time was up, Luke took this off his own chain and gave it to me. So you don't forget,
He said, mimicking Lucien's heavy French accent.
like I ever could.
Gideon huffed, a breath of dry amusement escaping him. A small rueful smile crossed Gideon's lips as he tucked the chain back under his shirt.
5 years of heat, sand, and bad decisions. But I got to see the world, or at least a part of it.
Lydia propped her chin on her hand.
And now you're on the Titanic, cooking for the titled and the terribly spoiled.
Well now, as it happens, I'd gone up to Belfast to see the old family homeland. And wouldn't you know it? The Titanic was there in the harbour, grand as anything, just about to sail for Southampton. They were needing a cook for the crossing back to New York, so I said to myself, why not? And I took the post.
He grinned.
Strange bit of fate, that.
Is this just another stop along the way?
She asked, her voice softer now.
Or are you finally heading home?
His fingers stilled against the cup.
I guess that depends on what home means.
He lifted a shoulder.
I'm going back to Brooklyn. The restaurant's still there waiting. My dad wants me to take it over.
Kate arched a brow.
And you're not sure if you want to?
Gideon hesitated, then exhaled.
I don't know. I've gotten used to moving. The world's a big place.
Lydia nodded, understanding more than she wanted to admit. They sat in silence for a moment, the music in the background fading into a distant hum. Then Gideon leaned forward, resting his forearms on the table, his grin turning a little lazy, a little reckless.
You should stay with me when we get to America.
He murmured.
If you really want to see how the other half lives.
Lydia blinked.
What?
When we dock in New York, you should stay with me instead of that.
He waved a vague hand, smirking.
That dull little life waiting for you.
Kate choked on her ale, laughing.
Oh, that's rich. You're half drunk, Gideon.
He grinned, lifting his cup in a loose toast.
Not nearly enough.
Lydia shook her head with a laugh.
You're a dreamer, Gideon Christopher.
He tilted his head, smirking.
Maybe so. But what's that make you, Lady Weatherby?
She exhaled, setting the cup down with a soft clink.
I don't know.
She admitted. Kate, watching them both, took another sip of her ale, a smirk tugging at her lips. Before either of them could speak again, a voice rang out across the room.
Well now, if it ain't our fancy-dressed guest.
Lydia turned just as a group of crewmen, grinning and already tipsy, stumbled over with a fiddle and a ukulele in tow. One of them, a stoker with a thick Irish accent, slapped Gideon on the shoulder.
You've been hogging her all to yourself, mate,
he said, nodding toward Lydia.
We can't have that.
Another, a Scottish steward, waggled his brows.
So tell us, Miss Weatherby, did our cook sweep you off your feet, or were you just humouring him?
Kate snorted.
Oh, she humours him all right.
Lydia smirked.
A lady never tells.
The men howled in laughter, and one of them struck the first notes on the ukulele.
Ah, let's have a tune for the lady then.
The fiddle joined in, quick and lively, and soon the entire group was clapping in time as they launched into song.
Oh, have you met Miss Lydia, who waltzed in silk so fine? She left the lords and ladies there.
Kate groaned in mock horror while Gideon leaned back, laughing.
A glass, a glass, a glass to Lydia
Weatherby.
Lydia shot Gideon a look.
Did you put them up to this?
Not at all,
he said, far too innocently. The men were in full swing now, off-key, half-drunk, and utterly unashamed. The lyrics had devolved into something vaguely rhyming and increasingly ridiculous. Only one voice carried with any confidence. Murphy, a wiry Irishman with a battered ukulele and the grin of someone who'd been waiting all night for this moment. He strummed with surprising rhythm, belting out verses as if he'd written them years ago and simply been waiting for the right occasion to unleash them. Kate glanced at Lydia, eyebrows raised.
Are they seriously making this up as they go?
Lydia covered her mouth to stifle a laugh, her eyes watering.
If that's meant to be poetry, I demand a refund.
Gideon nearly choked on his drink.
This is what happens when stalkers get sentimental.
The three of them burst into laughter, barely managing to stay upright amid the noise and nonsense around them. For a moment, it was just the three of them, caught in that hazy middle place between mockery and memory. Kate grinned and threw an arm around Lydia's shoulders.
Better just sing along, love.
And as the whole room stomped and sang, Lydia did just that. She sang loud, off-key, and entirely without care. And for the first time in a very long time, she felt like someone who belonged. Next time, in The Cook.
Last night, I let Kate see my world, the one behind the lace and laughter. And I danced, wildly, without consequence. For a few hours, I was no one. But morning came. Kate helped me dress, just like always. Chemise, corset, petticoat, pearls. Every layer, a little more of me, vanishing. She was my lady's maid again, and once more, I was Lydia Weatherby.
Chapter 11. The Morning After. Coming soon.